Imagine standing on the windswept plains of Montana, where the earth meets the sky in an endless horizon of golden grassland. The Rocky Mountains rise like ancient sentinels to the west, their peaks crowned with eternal snow. This is the backbone of the world, a sacred landscape where thunder lives atop Chief Mountain, where buffalo once blackened the prairie in numbers beyond counting, and where a people as old as the last ice age have carved their story into the very soul of North America. This is the land of the Blackfeet. For 18,000 years, longer than the pyramids have stood, longer than any written history can trace, the Blackfeet people have called this place home. They are the Niitsitapi, the original people, the real people. Their DNA carries the memory of glaciers retreating, of mammoths walking these plains, of a world being born from ice and fire. But this is not a story of the past alone. This is a story of warriors who struck fear into the hearts of empires, of spiritual power so profound it could call buffalo from the horizon, of a people who faced extinction and refused to disappear, of resilience that burns brighter today than ever before. You are about to witness one of the most powerful, most tragic, and most triumphant stories in all of human history, the story of the Blackfeet Nation. And it begins not with conquest, not with tragedy, but with creation itself. Before there were mountains, before there were plains, before there was anything at all, there was only water. Endless water stretching to infinity in every direction, and floating upon that water was Old Man Napi, the creator, the trickster, the teacher of the Blackfeet people. Napi looked out across the endless ocean and knew that something must be done. He called to the animals who floated with him on a great raft. First, he sent the beaver diving down into the depths, searching for the bottom, searching for mud. The beaver dove deep, deeper than any creature had ever gone, but the water was too vast. He returned exhausted, empty-pawed. Then Napi sent the loon, that haunting bird whose cry echoes across still waters. Down the loon went, down into darkness, but even the loon could not reach the bottom. The otter tried next, diving with all its strength, but the depths were too great. Finally, Napi turned to the smallest, the humble muskrat, and the muskrat dove. He was gone so long that the other animals thought surely he had drowned. They thought they would never see him again. But then, just as hope was fading, the muskrat floated to the surface, barely alive, his tiny paws clenched tight. When they pulled him onto the raft and opened his paws, there it was, a small ball of mud, the seed of creation. Napi took that precious mud and began to work. He dried it under the sun, and as it dried, he scattered it upon the waters. And where the mud touched the water, land appeared. The earth was born, but Napi was not finished. He walked across this new land, shaping it with his hands and his will. Where he wanted rivers to flow, he dragged his finger through the earth, and the water followed. He made some rivers run smooth and gentle, perfect for fishing. Others he made wild and tumbling, with great waterfalls that crashed and roared. He piled up stones to make mountains. The sweet grass hills rose from the plains, solitary and sacred. The great spine of the Rockies lifted toward the sky, creating the backbone of the world. He scattered grass seeds across the prairies so that animals would have food. He marked out special places where wild turnips would grow, where camas bulbs would thrive, where service berries would ripen sweet and plentiful. Then Napi created the animals, the deer for the forests, the elk for the meadows, the antelope for the open plains. He created the eagle to soar above all creation, the bear to teach strength, the wolf to teach cooperation, and finally, he he created the greatest gift of all, the buffalo, millions upon millions of buffalo, their hooves like thunder across the earth, their dark forms flowing like a living river across the grasslands. The buffalo would be everything to the people: food and clothing, shelter and tools, the very center of life itself. And then Napi created the first man and the first woman. He taught them how to live, what plants to eat, which animals to hunt. He taught them about the buffalo, showed them how to honor these sacred creatures, how to use every part with gratitude and respect. He gave them language, gave them songs, gave them the knowledge they would need to survive in this new world. But Napi was also a trickster. The stories say he was sometimes wise and sometimes foolish. Sometimes he helped the people, and sometimes he caused trouble just to see what would happen. Through his mistakes and his adventures, he taught the Blackfeet important lessons about life, about pride, about respect for all living things. One of the most important teachings came when old man and old woman, his wife Kipitaki, had to decide about death. Old man said that people should never die, but old woman was wiser. She knew that if people lived forever, the world would become too crowded. There would not be enough food, enough space, enough of anything. So they decided to settle it with a test. They would throw a buffalo chip into the water. If it floated, people would die for only 4 days and then come back to life. If it sank, death would be permanent. But old woman used her great power. She caused the chip to turn to stone. It sank, and so death came into the world, permanent and final, teaching the people to cherish every moment, to honor every life, to remember those who had gone before. This is how the Blackfeet understand their beginning, not as myth, not as mere story, but as sacred truth passed down through countless generations. The elders tell these stories still, in the Blackfeet language, in the old way, keeping alive the memory of creation. And science, in its own way, has confirmed the ancient knowledge. DNA analysis completed in 2023 traced Blackfeet ancestry back 18,000 years to the last ice age, making them one of the oldest continuous populations in North America. The Blackfeet are not newcomers to this land. They are not immigrants or wanderers who arrived and left. They have been here since the glaciers carved these valleys, since the great ice sheets retreated and left behind this magnificent landscape. The Blackfeet are the only tribe in Montana that has remained on their ancestral homeland since time immemorial. This land is not just where they live, it is who they are. Every mountain has a name. Every river tells a story. Every stone carries memory. The landscape itself is a sacred text, written in the language of creation, read by those who know how to listen. Long before European boots touched this continent, long before horses transformed the plains, the Blackfeet had already built a civilization perfectly adapted to the great ocean of grass that stretched from horizon to horizon. They called themselves Niitsitapi, the real people, the original people. But to others, they were known by the color of their moccasins. Darkened black from walking through the ashes of prairie fires they set to manage the land. The Blackfeet were not just inhabitants of the prairie. They were master ecologists who understood the delicate balance of this ecosystem better than any scientist could document. They knew that fire was not the enemy. Fire was a tool. They would set controlled burns across the grasslands, watching carefully as the flames consumed old, dried grass. And when the rains came, new growth would spring up, more nutritious than the old. The buffalo would smell that fresh green grass from miles away and come flooding back to graze. The Blackfeet had learned to call the buffalo not with magic, but with knowledge of the land itself. The Blackfoot Confederacy was composed of 4 closely related nations, bound together by language, culture, and kinship. In Canada, there were the Siksika, the Blackfoot proper, the Kainai or Blood people, and the Northern Piikani. South of the border that would one day divide them lived the Southern Piikani, who Americans called the Piegan Blackfeet. Together, they controlled a territory so vast it staggers the imagination, from what is now Edmonton in northern Alberta all the way south to Yellowstone, from the towering peaks of Glacier National Park eastward to the Black Hills of South Dakota. This was Blackfeet country, an empire of grass and sky, of river and mountain, larger than many European nations. But the Blackfeet were not a centralized empire with kings and capitals. They were a fluid, dynamic society organized into bands. During the harsh winter months, when blizzards screamed across the plains and temperatures dropped to 40 below zero, the people would separate into smaller family groups of 10 to 20 lodges, perhaps 100 to 200 people. These winter camps would shelter in wooded river valleys where there was protection from the wind, fuel for fires, and game to hunt. Each band had a headman chosen not by birth but by merit. He had to be brave in battle, yes, but also wise in counsel, generous with his possessions, and concerned with the welfare of every person in his care. Leadership was earned, not inherited. A man could rise to greatness through his deeds, his character, his service to the people. The flexibility of Blackfeet society was one of its greatest strengths. Membership in a band was based on residence, not kinship. If you disagreed with your headman, if you felt your family would be better served elsewhere, you could pack up your teepee and join another band. This freedom of movement prevented the kind of internal conflicts that tore apart other societies. It created a system where leaders had to actually lead, had to earn the loyalty of their people every single day. When spring broke winter's grip and the snow began to melt, when the first thunderstorms rolled across the awakening prairie, the bands would begin to move, following the buffalo, following the turning of the seasons, following paths their ancestors had walked for thousands of years. Summer was a time of gathering, the time of plenty, the time when all the Blackfeet bands would come together in one great encampment. Imagine it. Hundreds of teepees arranged in a vast circle, each painted with sacred designs that told the story of the family within. Designs that came from visions, from dreams, from brave deeds in battle or sacred moments of communion with the spirit world. The teepee itself was a marvel of engineering, perfectly designed for life on the plains. Made from buffalo hide stretched over lodgepole pine, it was waterproof, transportable, and incredibly efficient. The conical shape shed rain and snow. The smoke flaps at the top could be adjusted to draw smoke out while keeping rain from coming in. In winter, an inner lining created an insulating air pocket that kept the interior surprisingly warm. In summer, the sides could be rolled up to allow cooling breezes to flow through. Every teepee had its place in the great camp circle, determined by band affiliation and family lineage. The opening always faced east to greet the rising sun, the source of all life and power. Inside, everything had its proper place. The back of the teepee opposite the door was the place of honor where the man of the house would sit, where honored guests would be welcomed. Sacred objects and medicine bundles hung from the poles, protected and revered. The women owned the teepees. They built them, took them down, transported them, and set them up again at each new camp. This was not oppression, but power. The home was the woman's domain, and with it came authority and respect. Women prepared the food, made the clothing, created the intricate quill work and later beadwork that decorated everything from moccasins to war shirts. They processed the buffalo hides, turning raw skin into soft, supple leather through days of exhausting work. But women also had their own societies, their own sacred knowledge, their own crucial role in the spiritual life of the people. Some women became medicine women, healers who knew the properties of every plant, who could treat wounds, ease childbirth, cure diseases with remedies passed down through generations. The most honored women might become the vow woman who sponsored the sun dance, the most sacred ceremony of all. Men's lives revolved around hunting, war, and spiritual seeking. From boyhood, they were trained in the skills they would need: how to ride a horse as if they were one being, how to shoot an arrow with enough force to pierce a buffalo's thick hide, how to track game across seemingly empty prairie, how to fight, to defend the people, to bring honor to their families through brave deeds. But bravery in Blackfeet culture was not mindless violence. It was calculated, ritualized, filled with spiritual meaning. The greatest honor came not from killing enemies, but from counting coup, touching an enemy in battle and living to tell about it, to ride up to an armed warrior and strike him with your coup stick. To risk your life in that moment of contact, this was the ultimate test of courage. Young men would go on vision quests, fasting alone in isolated places, praying for guidance, seeking contact with the spirit world. They would spend days without food or water, singing sacred songs, offering tobacco and prayers, waiting for a vision that would give them power, give them a song, give them a guardian spirit to watch over them for the rest of their lives. These visions were not taken lightly. They shaped a man's entire life, determined which warrior society he would join, what medicine bundle he might one day carry, what path he would walk through the world. The buffalo was the center around which everything turned. The Blackfeet had more than 60 different uses for various parts of the buffalo. The meat, of course, was food. Fresh meat roasted over fires, boiled in skin pouches heated with hot stones. Dried meat pounded with berries and fat to make pemmican, the perfect travel food that would last for months. The hide became clothing, became teepee covers, became the tough rawhide used for shields and parfleches, the painted containers that held precious belongings. The bones became tools, awls for sewing, scrapers for working hides, needles for stitching. The horns became cups and spoons. The sinew became thread stronger than any plant fiber. The stomach and bladder became water containers. Even the tail became a fly swatter. And the buffalo chips, dried dung, became fuel for fires on the treeless plains. Nothing was wasted. Everything was used with reverence and gratitude. The buffalo was not just an animal. It was a gift from the Creator, a sacred being that gave its life so that the people could live. Every hunt began with prayers, with ceremonies, with offerings of tobacco and appeals to the buffalo spirit, to forgive the taking of life, to understand the necessity, to continue providing for the people. Before horses, hunting buffalo was an exercise in intelligence, cooperation, and nerve. The people developed the piskun, the buffalo jump, a technique that required extraordinary planning and coordination. The piskun, even the word, carries weight, carries history, carries the memory of 1,000 successful hunts and the gratitude of a people who knew that survival hung in the balance of every jump. Across the Blackfeet territory, certain places were sacred for the hunt. Cliffs where the prairie ended abruptly, dropping away to rocks and rivers far below. These were not random locations, but carefully chosen spots where the landscape itself became a tool, where the wisdom of countless generations had determined that buffalo could be led, could be gathered, could be given as a gift to the people. The preparation for a buffalo jump took days, sometimes weeks. First, the people would build drive lanes, long funnel-shaped corridors made of rock piles and brush, sometimes stretching for miles across the prairie. These lanes would be invisible to the buffalo until it was too late, marked only by small cairns that would be manned by people during the drive. At the base of the cliff, they would build a strong corral, a piskun, made from logs and rocks, designed to hold the buffalo that survived the fall. Every detail mattered. Every preparation was crucial, because if the hunt failed, people would starve. But before any physical preparation, there were spiritual preparations even more important. The buffalo calling ceremony would begin days before the hunt. The people would gather, would fast, would pray. Sacred objects would be brought out from medicine bundles, treated with the utmost reverence. The most powerful of these sacred objects was the iniskim, the buffalo stone. These small fossils, usually ammonites from an ancient sea that once covered these plains, were believed to have the power to call buffalo. But you could not search for a buffalo stone. It had to find you. The stories say that if you were meant to have one, you would hear it chirping like a small bird, calling to you from the grass. Only then could you pick it up. Only then could you claim its power. The person who possessed a buffalo stone was considered tremendously fortunate, blessed by the spirits with the ability to ensure successful hunts. These stones were kept in medicine bundles, brought out only for the most important ceremonies, treated as living beings that required feeding with sacred smoke, with offerings, with respect. When the day of the hunt arrived, everything depended on the buffalo runner, the young man chosen to lure the herd toward the jump. This was not a task for the faint of heart. It required patience, nerve, and an almost supernatural understanding of buffalo behavior. Before dawn, while the camp still slept, the buffalo runner would leave. He would climb the bluffs to the high prairie, moving silently, carefully, following trails marked by countless hunts before him. He would locate the herd that scouts had spotted the previous day. Massive animals grazing peacefully, unaware that their fate was about to unfold. The runner would approach as close as he dared without alarming them. Then he would begin his work. He would make calls, sounds that mimicked a calf in distress or other buffalo vocalizations. He would toss his buffalo robe into the air, a strange movement that would catch the attention of the curious animals. Buffalo are curious creatures. When they saw this unusual sight, this odd behavior, they would start to move closer, wanting to investigate, and the runner would retreat, always staying just visible enough to keep their interest, just far enough to keep them following. Step by step, yard by yard, he would lead them toward the drive lanes, toward the cliff, toward the moment when curiosity would turn to panic and the whole herd would begin to run. And then, at the crucial moment, the hidden people along the drive lanes would rise up. They would wave robes, they would shout, they would create a wall of movement and noise that would funnel the buffalo forward, that would prevent them from turning aside, that would drive them faster and faster toward the precipice. The thunder of hooves would shake the earth. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of buffalo running in terror, running in a mass of muscle and horn and wild momentum that could not be stopped. The leaders would try to slow down when they saw the cliff's edge, but the pressure from behind was too great. Those in front would be pushed over, then those behind them, then more and more until bodies were tumbling through the air, crashing onto the rocks below. Not all would die from the fall. Many would be injured, trapped in the corral at the bottom, unable to escape. And then the final part of the hunt would begin. Men would shoot arrows into the corralled buffalo. Women would go in with clubs to finish those too injured to be dangerous. And the sacred work of harvest would commence. Every person had a role. The butchering was a community effort, a race against time, and the elements to process the meat before it spoiled. Women wielded knives with practiced precision, stripping hide from flesh, cutting meat into strips for drying, rendering fat, saving every precious part. The successful piskun hunt could provide food for months. Meat would be dried on racks in the sun and wind, preserved as jerky that would sustain the people through the long winter. Pemmican would be prepared, that miracle food of pounded dried meat mixed with fat and berries, concentrated nutrition that would not spoil. That was light enough to carry on long journeys. The spiritual gratitude was as important as the physical harvest. Prayers were offered to the spirits of the buffalo, asking them to forgive the taking of life, to understand that it was done with respect, done with necessity, done with the promise that nothing would be wasted. The buffalo had given themselves so that the people could live. This was a sacred contract, a relationship of mutual respect and reciprocity. The piskun was used for over 5,000 years in the northern plains. Archaeological evidence at sites like Edsmashed Inn in Alberta, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, shows layer upon layer of buffalo bones, centuries of successful hunts. Proof that this method worked, that it sustained communities through millennia. But the piskun required something that modern people often undervalue. It required cooperation on a massive scale. It required every person to know their role and perform it flawlessly. It required trust, communication, discipline, and shared purpose. The piskun shaped Blackfeet society, taught lessons about working together, about the importance of every individual's contribution to the whole. When horses arrived on the plains in the early 1700s, everything changed. The Blackfeet first saw horses sometime around 1730, and they saw them in the worst possible way. They were being attacked by their enemies to the south. The Shoshone, warriors mounted on strange animals that moved with terrifying speed and power. The Blackfeet called them elk dogs or big dogs, and at first they were afraid. These creatures gave the Shoshone an enormous advantage in battle. They could strike and retreat before foot-bound warriors could respond. They could carry more supplies, travel farther, hunt more effectively. But the Blackfeet were quick learners and fierce competitors. Within a generation, they had acquired their own horses, either captured in raids or obtained through trade. And once they had horses, everything changed. The Blackfeet transformed from a formidable people into one of the most powerful military forces in North America. They became master horsemen, perhaps the finest riders on the Great Plains. Blackfeet boys learned to ride almost before they could walk. They would practice acrobatics on horseback, shooting arrows at full gallop, picking up objects from the ground while riding at speed. The horse became an extension of the warrior's body, a partner in battle, a source of wealth and prestige. With horses, the Blackfeet territory exploded outward. They pushed west aggressively, driving the Kootenai and Flathead tribes across the Continental Divide into the western mountain valleys. They pushed the Shoshone south and west, taking revenge for those early defeats. They ranged across the entire northern plains, from Saskatchewan to Yellowstone, lords of an empire of grass. The horse meant more than military power. It meant wealth. A man's status was measured in horses. A good hunter might own 20 horses. A successful war chief might own 100 or more. Horses were currency, used to purchase wives, to make gifts, to settle disputes, to demonstrate generosity and power. But horses also required resources. They needed grazing land, water, protection from enemies and from harsh winters. The competition for these resources intensified conflicts between tribes. Raiding became not just a path to glory, but an economic necessity. Young men would travel hundreds of miles to steal horses from enemies, walking to the target camp and riding the stolen horses home in triumphant procession. At the same time that horses were transforming Blackfeet society, another European import was having an equally profound impact: guns. The Blackfeet obtained their first firearms through trade with the Cree and Assiniboine, who in turn got them from French and later British fur traders. The combination of horses and guns made the Blackfeet nearly unstoppable. They could ride faster than anyone else and shoot with deadly accuracy from horseback. Their enemies learned to fear them. By the early 1800s, the Blackfeet numbered over 15,000 people, and they controlled more territory than any other tribe on the northern plains. Their reputation spread far and wide. Other tribes spoke of them in whispers. White traders and trappers learned to avoid Blackfeet territory if they valued their lives. The warrior societies became the beating heart of Blackfeet military culture. These were not just fighting units, but social organizations with deep spiritual significance. The Kit Fox Society, the Crazy Dogs, the Bulls, each had its own songs, its own dances, its own standards of bravery and honor. Young men would compete fiercely to join these societies, to earn the right to wear their regalia, to carry their sacred objects into battle. Membership was a mark of prestige, proof that you had demonstrated courage, that you had counted coup, that you had brought honor to your family and your people. The regalia worn by Blackfeet warriors was breathtaking. War shirts made from the softest buckskin, decorated with intricate quillwork in geometric patterns, fringed with scalps or ermine tails. Each element had meaning, told a story, represented a deed of valor. A fully dressed Blackfeet warrior was a walking testament to bravery, a living artwork that commanded respect and inspired fear. War bonnets, those iconic headdresses with trailing eagle feathers, were not worn by everyone. Each feather had to be earned through specific acts of courage in battle. A full bonnet might represent dozens of brave deeds, years of proven valor. When a warrior wearing such a bonnet rode into battle or into council, everyone knew they were looking at a man who had tested himself in the ultimate crucible and survived. But warfare in Blackfeet culture was not mindless slaughter. It was ritualized, governed by customs and traditions that made it as much about honor as about violence. The greatest warriors were those who took the greatest risks while showing the greatest restraint. Counting coup, the act of touching an enemy and escaping unharmed, was valued above killing. To ride up to an armed opponent, strike him with your coup stick, and live to tell about it required courage that simple killing did not. It was a public demonstration of bravery, witnessed by both sides, impossible to fake or exaggerate. Warriors would often recount their coups at public gatherings, at ceremonies, at the medicine lodge during Sundance time. These recitations were taken seriously. To lie about your deeds was the ultimate dishonor. If you claimed a coup you had not earned, if you exaggerated your role in battle, you could be challenged, called out, publicly shamed. A man caught lying about his war record would fall from whatever status he had achieved, become an object of contempt to even the lowest members of the tribe. This emphasis on truth, on witness deeds, on public accountability, created a warrior culture that valued genuine courage over mere aggression. It created heroes who earned their status through actions that everyone could verify. The Blackfeet warred with almost everyone. To the north and east, they fought the Cree and Assiniboine, former trading partners who became bitter enemies. To the south, they battled the Crow, engaging in raids and counter-raids that went on for generations. To the west, The Flathead and Kootenay were constant opponents. Even the mighty Sioux, lords of the Central Plains, tangled with Blackfeet war parties and learned that these northern warriors were not to be taken lightly. One of the most famous battles occurred in the winter of 1834 in the Wind River Mountains of Wyoming. A large Crow hunting party, 500 warriors strong, encountered a much smaller Blackfeet war party, less than 100 men. The Crows, confident in their numbers, attacked immediately, but the Blackfeet, though outnumbered, were veterans of countless battles. They fought with the desperation of men who knew they would receive no quarter and the skill of the finest warriors on the plains. They used every advantage of terrain, every tactic they knew. They fought all day, and when the sun set, they had not only survived but had turned the tide. The Crows retreated, leaving their dead on the field, and the Blackfeet, against all odds, celebrated a victory that would be remembered in songs and stories for generations. This was the power of Blackfeet warriors, not just in numbers, not just in weapons, but in courage, in skill, in the refusal to accept defeat even when outnumbered 5-1. The spiritual dimension of warfare was always present. Before any raid, before any battle, warriors would purify themselves in the sweat lodge. That dome-shaped structure made from willow branches and covered with hides. Inside, in the darkness and steam created by pouring water over heated stones, they would pray. They would ask for protection, for courage, for success. They would seek visions, guidance from the spirits. Warriors would paint themselves for battle, each design carrying spiritual significance. The paints were made from natural materials, colored earths, charcoal, plant dyes. The patterns were not random, but came from dreams, from visions, from medicine power granted by guardian spirits. A warrior might paint his face to invoke the protection of the bear, painting his horse to invoke the speed of the antelope. These were not mere decorations, but spiritual armor, believed to deflect bullets, turn aside arrows, confuse enemies. Medicine bundles went to war. These sacred packages, wrapped in hide or cloth, contained objects of power, feathers, stones, herbs, each item carefully chosen and blessed. A warrior carrying his medicine bundle believed he carried with him the favor of the spirits, protection that no merely physical armor could match. And often, they were right. The psychological impact of facing Blackfeet warriors at the height of their power cannot be overstated. Mounted on painted horses, faces painted for war, carrying sacred objects, singing war songs, moving with the absolute confidence of men who believed the spirits rode with them, they were a sight that made experienced warriors think twice about engaging in battle. But the age of Blackfeet dominance, this golden age of horses and power and control of the plains, was about to encounter something they could not fight with courage or horses or medicine power. The white men were coming, and they brought with them diseases, greed, and a way of life that would challenge everything the Blackfeet knew. The first extended contact between the Blackfeet and Americans came in July 1806, when Captain Meriwether Lewis and 3 of his men encountered a small party of 8 Piegan Blackfeet along the Two Medicine River. The meeting began peacefully enough. Lewis gave the young warriors gifts, medals bearing President Jefferson's image, an American flag. He explained, perhaps unwisely, that the United States planned to bring trade goods to all the tribes of the region, including the Blackfeet's traditional enemies, the Shoshone, Nez Perce, and Flathead. He told them that American traders would supply guns and ammunition to these tribes. That night, while Lewis and his men camped with the Blackfeet, the young warriors attempted to steal the expedition's guns and horses. In the confrontation that followed, 2 Blackfeet were killed, one shot by Reuben Fields, another stabbed by Joseph Fields. Lewis himself shot at a fleeing warrior, but may have missed. The Americans fled, riding hard for 60 miles before stopping to rest, knowing that if a larger Blackfeet force caught them, they were dead men. They made it safely back to their party, but the damage was done. The Blackfeet had learned that Americans would arm their enemies and would kill Blackfeet warriors when confronted. This inauspicious beginning poisoned relations between the Blackfeet and American trappers and traders for decades. When fur companies began sending trappers into Blackfeet territory in the years following the Lewis and Clark expedition, they found themselves in constant conflict. The Blackfeet saw these trappers not as traders but as poachers, invading their territory, taking beaver and other animals without permission, without offering anything in return. The trappers, for their part, saw the Blackfeet as unreasonable savages who refused to allow honest men to make a living. The reality was more complex. The Blackfeet had been trading with British companies, the Hudson's Bay Company and the Northwest Company, for decades. These relationships, while not without problems, had established protocols, expectations, patterns of exchange that both sides understood. The Americans, arriving later, wanted to circumvent these established trading relationships to go directly to the source of furs, cutting out the British middlemen and the tribal intermediaries. The Blackfeet resisted this American intrusion fiercely. War parties would attack American trappers on sight, killing them, taking their horses and equipment, driving them from Blackfeet territory. The upper Missouri River and the Three Forks region, prime beaver country, became known as the most dangerous place in North America for American fur trappers. Manuel Lisa, one of the most ambitious American fur traders, sent expedition after expedition into Blackfeet country, and expedition after expedition either retreated in failure or left men dead on the prairie. In 1810, Andrew Henry and Pierre Menard tried to establish a trading post at the Three Forks. Blackfeet and their allies, the Gros Ventre, attacked constantly, killing trappers, making it impossible to set traps, destroying any chance of profitable operation. George Drouillard, a veteran of the Lewis and Clark expedition and one of the finest frontiersmen of his age, was killed by Blackfeet near the Three Forks. His death sent shockwaves through the fur trade community. If Drouillard, with all his skill and experience, could be killed, no one was safe. John Coulter, another Lewis and Clark veteran, had multiple narrow escapes from Blackfeet war parties. In the most famous incident, he was captured by Blackfeet along with a companion named Potts. Potts was killed immediately. Coulter was stripped naked and told to run. The warriors would give him a head start, then hunt him for sport. Coulter ran, barefoot across cactus and sharp rocks, naked under the brutal sun. He ran for his life. Most of the warriors gave up after a few miles, but one particularly fast young man stayed close. When Coulter could run no more, when his lungs were burning and blood was streaming from his nose from the exertion, he turned to face his pursuer. The young Blackfeet warrior was so surprised by this sudden reversal that he stumbled, his spear breaking as he fell. Coulter grabbed the broken spear and killed the warrior with it. Then he ran on, hiding in a beaver lodge in the river, breathing through the spaces between the logs while the frustrated warriors searched for him all night. He walked, still naked, for 7 days through hostile territory before reaching a trading post. His survival was considered miraculous, a testament to his toughness and his will to live, but it also enhanced the Blackfeet's fearsome reputation. These were warriors who would chase a man to death across the prairie for sport, who would kill without hesitation or mercy any white man who entered their territory without permission. The hostility toward American trappers was pragmatic as much as cultural. The Blackfeet economy had become intertwined with the fur trade, but on their terms through established British trading posts. They traded buffalo robes, beaver pelts, wolf and fox furs for manufactured goods, kettles, knives, cloth, and most importantly, guns and ammunition. This trade created dependencies. Iron kettles were superior to stone-boiled pottery or skin bags heated with rocks. Steel knives held an edge far better than flaked stone. Cloth was easier to make clothes from than laboriously scraped and tanned hides. And guns. Guns were essential for both hunting and warfare. But the trade also created leverage. The British needed the Blackfeet as much as the Blackfeet needed the British. This mutual dependence gave the Blackfeet negotiating power, allowed them to set terms, to refuse deals they found unfavorable. The American trappers, coming in as independent operators, bypassing the tribal power structure, threatened this carefully balanced system. So the Blackfeet fought. Throughout the 1820s and 1830s, they waged a remarkably effective guerrilla campaign against American fur interests. Trapper Rendezvous, the annual gatherings where mountain men would sell their furs and resupply, had to be held far from Blackfeet territory. The Three Forks region, potentially the richest beaver country in the West, remained largely untapped because it was simply too dangerous. In 1828, at a trapper rendezvous, a large Blackfeet force attacked, apparently intent on wiping out the Americans once and for all. A 6-hour battle ensued. The trappers, armed with rifles and fighting from defensive positions, managed to repel the attack, reportedly killing 173 Blackfeet warriors. The Blackfeet retreated, leaving their dead behind, an unusual action that showed how desperate the fighting had been. It was not until the 1830s that relations began to thaw slightly. The American Fur Company, learning from decades of failure, changed tactics. Instead of trying to take furs from Blackfeet territory by force, they began establishing trading posts on the margins of Blackfeet land, inviting the tribe to come trade on more equal terms. This approach worked better, but by then, new threats were emerging. Smallpox, the invisible enemy that no warrior could fight, no medicine could cure, was about to devastate the Blackfeet in ways that no military defeat ever could. In 1837, a steamboat called the St. Peter's churned up the Missouri River, carrying trade goods, supplies, and something else. Something microscopic and unbelievably deadly: smallpox. The disease had already appeared among white settlers and other tribes. But when it reached the Blackfeet, it hit with apocalyptic fury. Smallpox was a horror beyond anything the Blackfeet had experienced. It began with fever, headache, and vomiting. Then came the rash, starting in the mouth and on the face, spreading across the body. The pustules that gave the disease its name erupted across the skin, painful, oozing, leaving terrible scars on those few who survived. But most did not survive. The mortality rate among the Blackfeet was catastrophic, estimated at 60 to 90% in the hardest hit camps. Entire bands were wiped out. Families, extended kin groups, whole communities died within days of each other. The Blackfeet had no immunity to this European disease. Their medicine, so effective at treating wounds, setting bones, easing childbirth, delivering babies, was helpless against smallpox. The medicine men and women could only watch as their people died, as their songs and prayers seemed to have no power against this invisible enemy. The social devastation was as terrible as the physical. The disease killed indiscriminately, taking children and elders, warriors in their prime and pregnant women. It killed the knowledge keepers, The storytellers, the ones who remembered the old ways, the old songs, the sacred ceremonies, it killed faster than knowledge could be transmitted, leaving gaps in cultural memory that could never be fully filled. Some bands tried to flee, moving away from infected camps, hoping to outrun the disease, but they carried it with them, spreading it further. Others tried isolation, but the incubation period meant that by the time symptoms appeared, it was already too late. The disease had taken hold, and all they could do was wait for death. The psychological impact was crushing. The Blackfeet had always believed that spiritual power could protect them from harm, that proper ceremonies, proper respect for the sacred, would bring blessings from the Creator. But this disease seemed to mock those beliefs. The most devout died alongside those who had neglected the ceremonies. Children who had never harmed anyone died screaming in pain. It challenged everything they believed about how the world worked, about the relationship between the spiritual and physical realms, about the efficacy of their medicine and their prayers. Some lost faith entirely. Others clung more desperately to the old ways, hoping that if they just performed the ceremonies correctly, the sickness would stop. By the time the 1837 epidemic burned itself out, the Blackfeet population had been cut in half. From 15,000 or more, they had been reduced to perhaps 7,000 or 8,000, and this was not the only epidemic. Smallpox returned in 1845, then again in 1857, and again in 1869. Each time, it killed hundreds or thousands, further reducing a population already reeling from previous losses. Other diseases followed: measles, whooping cough, scarlet fever, influenza. Each took its toll. The year 1864 brought scarlet fever that killed over 1,000 Blackfeet in a single winter. The cumulative impact of these repeated epidemics was staggering. But disease was not the only challenge facing the Blackfeet in the mid-1800s. The buffalo, the foundation of their entire way of life, were disappearing. White buffalo hunters, armed with powerful rifles and motivated by profit rather than need, were slaughtering buffalo by the millions. Buffalo hides had become valuable commodities in the East, used for industrial belts, robes, leather goods. Professional hunters would shoot buffalo from long range, dozens or hundreds in a single day, taking only the hides and leaving the carcasses to rot on the prairie. The U.S. government encouraged this slaughter. Military leaders understood that destroying the buffalo was a way to destroy the Plains Indians' ability to maintain their traditional way of life. General Philip Sheridan, commander of the military division of the Missouri, reportedly said that buffalo hunters had done more in the last 2 years and will do more in the next year to settle the vexed Indian question than the entire regular army has done in the last 40 years. They are destroying the Indians' commissary. The strategy was deliberate genocide, destroying the food supply of an entire people as a military tactic. And it worked with terrible efficiency. In the early 1800s, there were an estimated 30 to 60 million buffalo on the Great Plains. By 1889, fewer than 1,000 remained. For the Blackfeet, the loss of the buffalo was catastrophic on multiple levels. It was not just the loss of food, though that alone would have been devastating. It was the loss of clothing, shelter, tools, trade goods. It was the loss of the sacred relationship with the animal that stood at the center of their spiritual life. The sun dance, the most important ceremony, revolved around the buffalo. The stories, the songs, the prayers, all were intertwined with these animals. What does it mean to a people when the center of their world disappears, when the animal that has sustained them for thousands of years, that they have honored and prayed to and depended on, utterly, simply vanishes from the earth? The psychological and spiritual impact is almost impossible to measure. The Blackfeet tried to adapt. They increased their hunting of deer and elk and antelope. They relied more heavily on government rations, beef and flour, distributed at agency headquarters. But these substitutes were inadequate, both nutritionally and culturally. Beef was not buffalo. Flour was not pemmican. This was not the food their bodies were accustomed to, and it came with the bitter taste of dependence, of charity, of submission. Starvation became a regular visitor to Blackfeet camps. The winter of 1883 to 1884 was particularly brutal, later remembered as Starvation Winter. With the buffalo gone and government rations insufficient, the Blackfeet suffered terribly. Estimates suggest that 600 people, perhaps a quarter of the remaining population, died of starvation and related illnesses that winter. The proud warriors who had once dominated the northern plains were reduced to begging for food from the very people who had destroyed their way of life. It was a humiliation, almost worse than death. But even as disease and starvation ravaged the Blackfeet, an even more direct assault was coming. The U.S. government, determined to pacify the Indians once and for all, to clear the land for white settlement, was about to launch a military campaign that would result in one of the most shameful massacres in American history. The winter of 1870 was brutally cold along the Marias River in northern Montana Territory. Temperatures dropped to 30 below zero. The wind screamed across the frozen prairie, driving snow into drifts that buried everything. It was the kind of cold that killed, that turned exposed skin black with frostbite in minutes, that made the very air seem like knives in your lungs. Along the big bend of the Marias River, sheltered by steep bluffs that offered some protection from the relentless wind, a band of Piegan Blackfeet had made their winter camp. 32 lodges clustered together, their painted buffalo hide covers dusted with snow. Smoke rose from the fires within, carrying the sense of cooking and warmth into the frozen air. This was Heavy Runner's band. Heavy Runner was known as a peaceful chief, a man who had worked to maintain good relations with the whites. He had papers, documents from the U.S. government that certified he was friendly, that his band was not to be molested. He kept those papers carefully, believing they would protect his people. But Heavy Runner's peaceful band was not the only group of Blackfeet in the area. Another chief, Mountain Chief, led a band that included young men who had been raiding white settlements, stealing horses, and, in at least one case, committing murder. The trouble had started in August 1869, when a young Blackfeet warrior named Owl Child had a dispute with Malcolm Clark, a white trader and rancher. Clark had beaten Owl Child severely, humiliating him in front of his people. Seeking revenge, Owl Child and some companions went to Clark's ranch and murdered him, killing the trader in front of his family. The killing caused outrage among white settlers. They demanded action, demanded punishment, demanded that the army do something about these hostile Indians. General Philip Sheridan, never one to hesitate when violence against Indians was an option, ordered Major Eugene Baker to lead a punitive expedition against Mountain Chief's band. Baker was a hard drinker with a reputation for aggressive action. He gathered a force of cavalry and infantry from Fort Ellis and Fort Shaw, nearly 200 men. Their orders were to find Mountain Chief, punish his band for the killing of Clark, and make an example that would prevent future attacks. On January 22, 1870, after days of forced marching through sub-zero weather, Baker's troops spotted a camp along the Marias River. They positioned themselves on the bluffs above the camp, surrounding it in the pre-dawn darkness, preparing for a surprise attack at first light. Baker had 3 guides with him, men who knew the Blackfeet. One was Joe Kipp, a mixed-blood trader who had lived among the Blackfeet for years. As the weak winter dawn began to illuminate the camp below, Kipp looked at the painted lodges and recognized the distinctive designs. This was Heavy Runner's camp. The peaceful chief, not Mountain Chief. The wrong band entirely. Kipp went to Baker, told him they had the wrong camp, that these were friendly Indians who should not be attacked. Baker, according to accounts, was drunk. He looked at Kipp with bleary eyes and said, "That makes no difference. One band or another of them. They are all pagans and we will attack them." Another guide, Joe Coble, had his own reasons for wanting Heavy Runner dead. The members of Heavy Runner's band had apparently stolen livestock from Cobell's ranch. Some historians believe Cobell may have deliberately led Baker to the wrong camp. As dawn broke on January 23, 1870, Heavy Runner emerged from his lodge. He had heard the sounds of soldiers moving into position, the jingle of harness, the low voices. He walked toward the bluffs, holding up his papers, the documents that were supposed to protect his people, waving them in the air to show the soldiers that this was a friendly camp. Joe Coble shot him dead. The first bullet of the massacre killed the peace chief, who was trying to prevent bloodshed. Then Baker gave the order to fire. The valley erupted in gunfire. Hundreds of rounds poured into the sleeping camp from the bluffs above. People stumbled from their lodges, confused, terrified, many still half asleep. Most of the able-bodied men were away from camp, out hunting. Those remaining were women, children, and the elderly, and many were sick. Smallpox had hit this camp, and dozens were suffering from the disease, weak, feverish, unable to flee. The soldiers shot into the lodges indiscriminately. They shot people as they ran. They shot people as they stumbled and fell in the snow. Some soldiers, realizing they were killing women and children, tried to stop the slaughter, but the killing continued for over an hour. When it was over, the silence was broken only by moans of the wounded and the crying of terrified children. The official army count listed 173 Blackfeet killed. Blackfeet survivors and the Indian agent William Pease reported the number was higher, perhaps 217. Of those killed, the vast majority were non-combatants. 90 women, 50 children, many of them infants, 33 men, and of those, 18 were elderly, and 15 were young boys not yet warriors. Only one U.S. soldier died, falling from his horse and breaking his leg in the bitter cold. But the killing was not finished. Baker's men captured about 140 women and children as prisoners. Then Baker discovered that many were infected with smallpox. Rather than risk spreading the disease to his troops, he simply released them. In the middle of winter, with temperatures at 30 below zero, with their lodges burned, their food supplies destroyed, their horses stolen, he abandoned them to their fate. Many froze to death in the following days. The soldiers also burned everything: 44 lodges, all the food stores, all the winter supplies. They took over 300 horses. They left the survivors with nothing in the dead of winter, miles from any help. The massacre, when news of it reached the East, caused outrage. Newspapers condemned it as the slaughter of innocents. A congressman denounced it as an atrocity that made civilization shudder. Calls for Baker's court-martial filled the halls of Congress, but General Sheridan defended the action. General William Sherman, Baker's former West Point classmate, helped cover up the truth. They claimed that most of the dead were warriors, that this had been a battle, not a massacre. They claimed the attack had been on Mountain Chief's hostile band, not Heavy Runner's peaceful camp. Baker filed a report that minimized the number of women and children killed and maximized the number of supposed warriors. The army protecting its own accepted his version of events. Baker faced no court-martial, no disciplinary action whatsoever. He would go on to serve with distinction in his military career. The massacre, a footnote in his official record. For the Blackfeet, the Marias Massacre was a wound that has never healed. They call it the Bear River Massacre, using their name for the Marias. Every January 23rd, descendants gather at the site to remember, to honor those who died, to ensure that this atrocity is not forgotten. The massacre had its intended effect. Blackfeet raids on white settlements stopped almost completely. The message had been sent and received. The U.S. government was willing to kill women and children, willing to attack peaceful bands, willing to do whatever was necessary to force the Blackfeet onto reservations and keep them there. The massacre also contributed to a shift in federal Indian policy. President Ulysses S. Grant, horrified by the public reaction to the massacre, adopted what he called a peace policy, supposedly designed to treat Indians more humanely. But this policy, like so many before it, was more about control than compassion. It meant the end of negotiations with tribes as sovereign nations and the beginning of treating them as wards of the state, dependent on government handouts, subject to government control. The Marias Massacre broke something in the Blackfeet spirit, but it did not break them entirely. Traumatized, decimated by disease and starvation, betrayed by those they had tried to trust, they persevered. Because they had no choice. Because giving up meant extinction. In 1855, the U.S. government negotiated a treaty with the Blackfeet that gave them and their allies, the Gros Ventre, an enormous territory encompassing much of Montana east of the Rocky Mountains. For a brief moment, it seemed like the Blackfeet might retain at least some meaningful portion of their homeland. But that territory began to shrink almost immediately. The pattern was depressingly familiar, the same pattern that had played out with tribe after tribe across America. The government would negotiate a treaty promising certain lands in perpetuity. Then, as white settlement increased, as gold was discovered or good farmland identified, the government would pressure the tribe to cede more land. In 1873 and 1874, President Grant issued executive orders removing the land between the Marias River and the Sun River from Blackfeet control. Stroke of a pen, thousands of square miles gone. In 1888, with the buffalo gone and the Blackfeet facing starvation, the government forced them to sign the Sweet Grass Hills Treaty. The Blackfeet had no leverage, no ability to resist. Sign or starve were the only options. The treaty established the current Blackfeet Reservation, about 1.5 million acres, and included lands on the eastern side of what would become Glacier National Park. But even that was not the end of the land theft. In 1896, the U.S. government came back for more. They wanted the mountain lands, the western portion of the reservation, the incredibly beautiful area of lakes and peaks and glaciers. They offered $1.5 million for land that was priceless to the Blackfeet, land that held sacred sites, land where they had hunted and gathered and prayed for countless generations. The Blackfeet resisted, but again, they had no real choice. The government made it clear that cooperation would be rewarded with increased rations, with promises of support. Refusal would mean continued starvation, continued suffering. It was extortion, pure and simple. The mountain lands were taken and incorporated into Glacier National Park, which opened to tourists in 1910. White visitors from around the world would come to marvel at the pristine wilderness, the untouched natural beauty. They did not know, or perhaps did not care, that they were looking at land stolen from people who were starving a few miles away. The Blackfeet were guaranteed rights to hunt, fish, and gather in these mountains, rights supposedly protected by treaty. But those rights were consistently violated, ignored, treated as if they did not exist. Game wardens would arrest Blackfeet hunters for taking deer in lands that were supposed to be theirs by treaty right. The courts almost always sided with the Park Service. Life on the reservation in the late 1800s and early 1900s was a struggle for survival against poverty, disease, and a government policy designed to destroy everything that made the Blackfeet who they were. The reservation system itself was designed to confine and control. Indians were not free to leave the reservation without permission from the Indian agent, a government official who wielded enormous power over every aspect of their lives. The agent controlled the distribution of rations, decided who could travel and who could not, enforced regulations that often contradicted Blackfeet culture and values. The government was determined to turn the Blackfeet into farmers, despite the fact that the reservation lands were far better suited to ranching. The climate was too dry, the growing season too short, the soil too poor for successful farming without extensive irrigation. But farming was seen as civilizing, as the proper occupation for people who needed to be transformed from savage hunters into productive citizens. The Allotment Act of 1907 divided reservation land into individual plots, 160 acres for each head of household. The idea was to break up communal tribal ownership and create individual property owners who would become self-sufficient farmers. The surplus land, everything not allotted to individual Indians, was then open to white settlement. This policy was a disaster on every level. The allotments were too small to support a family through farming or ranching in that arid climate. Many Blackfeet, unfamiliar with the concept of private property and land, did not understand what was happening. Some were cheated out of their allotments through fraud or manipulation. Others, desperate for cash, sold their land for a fraction of its value. The result was that large portions of the reservation ended up in white hands. Today, nearly 40% of the land within the Blackfeet Reservation is owned by non-Indians, a checkerboard pattern that makes unified land management almost impossible and serves as a daily reminder of theft and broken promises. But perhaps the most insidious attack on Blackfeet culture came through the boarding schools. Beginning in the 1880s and continuing well into the 20th century, the U.S. government operated boarding schools designed explicitly to civilize Indian children by destroying their connection to their culture. The philosophy was articulated by Richard Henry Pratt, founder of the Carlisle Indian Industrial School. Kill the Indian, save the man. Blackfeet children as young as 5 or 6 were forcibly removed from their families and sent to these schools. At the schools, everything Indian was forbidden and everything white was mandatory. Their hair, which Blackfeet wore long as a mark of identity and beauty, was cut short. Their traditional clothing was taken and burned, replaced with military-style uniforms or Victorian-era dresses. Their names were changed to English names, often chosen at random from the Bible or from lists of presidents. And most damaging of all, they were forbidden to speak Blackfeet. Children caught speaking their own language were beaten, had their mouths washed out with soap, were punished with isolation or hard labor. The goal was to make them ashamed of their language, ashamed of their culture, ashamed of being Indian. The schools taught English, basic reading and writing, arithmetic, and manual labor skills. Boys learned farming, carpentry, blacksmithing. Girls learned cooking, sewing, cleaning, all the skills needed to be servants in white households. The education was deliberately designed not to prepare them for leadership or advanced learning, but to make them useful laborers in white society. The conditions in these schools were often horrific. Children died from disease, from malnutrition, from accidents, from neglect. Physical and sexual abuse was rampant. Children who ran away and were caught faced severe punishment. Some froze to death trying to walk home across the winter prairie. The psychological damage was immense. Children torn from their families at a young age, forbidden to speak their language, punished for any expression of their culture, grew up traumatized, disconnected from their heritage, unable to function fully in either the Indian world or the white world. When they returned to the reservation as teenagers or young adults, they found themselves strangers in their own community. They had forgotten their language or been so traumatized by punishment for speaking it that they refused to use it. They did not know the ceremonies, the stories, the traditional knowledge that should have been passed down to them. They had been taught to be ashamed of being Indian, but white society rejected them as well. The boarding school system created generations of Blackfeet who were cut off from their culture, who carried deep trauma, who struggled with identity and belonging. The effects of this cultural genocide ripple through Blackfeet society even today, and yet, through all of this, through the land theft and the starvation and the boarding schools and the systematic assault on everything they held sacred, the Blackfeet survived. Not just physically survived, but culturally survived. The flame of their culture, as they would later say, never went out. It flickered, it grew dim, but it never died, because there were always elders who remembered, always people who kept the language alive, even if only in whispers, always those who maintained the ceremonies in secret, who passed down the stories, who refused to forget. The sun dance, the Okayan in Blackfeet language, is the most sacred ceremony of the Blackfeet people. For 8 days in midsummer, the entire tribe would gather to honor the Creator, to pray for the renewal of the earth, to give thanks for the gifts of life. The ceremony was so important, so central to Blackfeet identity, that in 1883 the U.S. government outlawed it. The Indian office in Washington declared the sun dance and other traditional ceremonies to be heathen practices that stood in the way of civilization. They were superstitious, backward, incompatible with Christianity and American values. They had to be stopped. Indian agents on the reservations were instructed to prevent the sun dance from being held. Those who participated could have their rations withheld, could be jailed, could face other punishments. The government was determined to stamp out this last major expression of traditional Blackfeet religion. But the Blackfeet refused to let it die. In the early years of the prohibition, they held the sun dance in secret, far from the agency headquarters, in remote areas where the agents' police were unlikely to find them. They kept watch, posted lookouts, and if government officials approached, they would scatter, hiding the sacred objects, denying that any ceremony had taken place. The sun dance was not just a religious ceremony, but a complete renewal of Blackfeet society, a time when all the bands came together, when warrior societies competed in games and dances, when young people courted, when marriages were arranged, when the whole web of social relationships was reinforced and celebrated. The ceremony itself was led by a sacred woman, the vow woman, who pledged to sponsor the sun dance as an offering to the Creator. This was not a role that could be taken lightly. The woman had to be virtuous, respected, someone whose character was above reproach. Her husband would support her, would undergo purification rituals, would sacrifice alongside her. The preparation took months. The selection of the sacred center pole, always a cottonwood tree, was itself a ceremony. Warriors would count ku on the tree before it was cut, honoring it as they would honor an enemy. Women who had lived virtuously would strike the first blows to cut it down. The tree would be carried back to camp and erected in the center of a circular lodge built specially for the ceremony. The lodge itself, the medicine lodge, was constructed with care and prayer. Posts and rafters radiating from the center pole created a circular structure open to the sky at the center, allowing the dancers to gaze at the sun as they performed their sacred duty. For days before the actual dancing began, there were preliminary ceremonies. The opening of sacred bundles, the Natoa's bundle carried by the vow woman, the beaver bundles, the medicine pipe bundles. Each bundle contained sacred objects collected over lifetimes, each object with its own story, its own power, its own songs. The dancers themselves, all volunteers, would fast for days. No food, no water, nothing but prayer and singing and the slow, rhythmic dance from the wall of the lodge to the center pole and back. Hour after hour, day after day, dancing in the summer heat, mouths dry, bodies exhausted, seeking visions, seeking blessings, offering their suffering as a prayer for the people. Some dancers would pierce their skin, wooden skewers thrust through the muscles of the chest or back, rawhide ropes attached to the skewers and then to the center pole. They would dance, pulling against the ropes until the skewers tore free, blood streaming down their bodies, the ultimate sacrifice of flesh and pain offered to the Creator. This was not torture, not mutilation, but sacred offering. The pain was temporary, but the spiritual power gained, the prayers sent up through that suffering, those were eternal. The dancers believed and believe still that their sacrifice brings blessings, not just to themselves, but to the entire tribe. Their pain purchases prayers for rain, for health, for successful hunts, for the welfare of the people. The government officials who outlawed the sun dance could not or would not understand this. They saw only what looked to them like barbaric self-mutilation, primitive savagery that needed to be stamped out for the Indians' own good. They could not see the profound spirituality, the deep faith, the communal sacrifice that bound the people together. But the Blackfeet knew, and they refused to give it up. From 1883 to 1934, for 51 years, the sun dance was officially illegal. But the Blackfeet held it anyway, in secret, in defiance of the law, risking punishment because the alternative, giving up the ceremony entirely, was unthinkable. In 1934, the Indian Reorganization Act reversed many of the most destructive federal policies. The allotment system was ended. Tribes were allowed to form their own governments, and the prohibition on traditional religious ceremonies was lifted. The Blackfeet could perform the sun dance openly again, and they have, every summer since, a continuous tradition that stretches back before recorded memory, interrupted but never broken, suppressed but never destroyed. The sun dance today draws Blackfeet from across the reservation and from around the world. People return home for this sacred time, setting up camps around the medicine lodge, reconnecting with family and community, participating in the ceremonies or supporting those who do. The dance is still led by a sacred woman and her husband. The dancers still fast and pray and sacrifice. The songs are still sung in the old way, in the Blackfeet language, passed down through generations of singers. The ceremony is still 8 days of intense spiritual focus, still a time when the boundary between the physical and spiritual worlds grows thin, when prayers rise like smoke toward the Creator. Non-Indians are not typically allowed to participate or even to observe the most sacred parts of the ceremony. This is not exclusion for its own sake, but protection of something precious, something that was nearly lost, something that needs to be guarded carefully so it can continue for future generations. The sun dance is proof that the Blackfeet spirit was not broken. Despite everything, the cultural genocide, the boarding schools, the starvation, the massacres, the theft of land and resources, the Blackfeet kept their most sacred ceremony alive. They passed it down, generation to generation, teaching the songs and the prayers and the proper way to conduct every aspect of the ritual. Today, the sun dance stands as a testament to resilience, to faith, to the unbreakable connection between the Blackfeet people and their creator, their land, their heritage. It is a living tradition, not a museum piece, not a recreation for tourists, but a vital, continuing spiritual practice that defines what it means to be Blackfeet. The 20th century brought continued hardships to the Blackfeet. The Great Depression hit the reservation as hard as it hit the rest of America, maybe harder. Poverty was endemic, unemployment was staggering, health problems related to poor nutrition, inadequate housing, and limited access to medical care plagued the community. But something else was happening too, something quieter, less visible to outsiders, but profoundly important. The Blackfeet were beginning to reclaim their culture, their language, their identity. It started with the elders, those who had never forgotten, who had kept the stories alive even when it was dangerous to do so. They began teaching again, openly sharing the knowledge they had protected through the dark years. In Niitsitapi, Blackfeet Community College opened in Browning, Montana. It was a tribally controlled institution, one of the first tribal colleges in the United States. The college offered not just standard academic courses, but also classes in Blackfeet, language, history, and culture. For the first time in generations, young Blackfeet could learn their heritage as part of their formal education. The language had been in critical condition. The boarding schools had been brutally effective at suppressing it. By the 1970s, very few young people spoke Blackfeet fluently. Most speakers were elders, and when they died, they took irreplaceable knowledge with them. The language was on the verge of extinction, but in 1982, something extraordinary happened. Darrell Kipp, a Blackfeet man who had earned a degree from Harvard and worked as a technical writer, returned to the reservation. He met Dorothy Still Smoking, who had also returned after earning a master's degree. Both felt something missing in their lives, a connection to their culture and language that they had lost. They began learning Blackfeet from elders like Edward Little Plume, and as they learned, they realized how critical the situation was. If something didn't change soon, the language would die within a generation. In 1987, Kipp, Still Smoking, and Little Plume founded the Piskun Institute, dedicated to language preservation and revitalization. Their approach was radical. Instead of teaching Blackfeet as a foreign language in schools that were otherwise English only, they would create a full immersion school where children would learn everything: math, science, history, all in Blackfeet. Many people on the reservation thought they were crazy. The language was associated in many minds with the trauma of boarding schools, with punishment and shame. Why would you want to teach children a language that had no practical value in the modern world? But Kipp and Still Smoking persisted. In 1995, they opened Niitsitapi, the Real Speak School, an immersion school where children from kindergarten through 8th grade learned entirely in Blackfeet. The results were remarkable. Children who went through the program became fluent speakers, the first fluent speakers in 2 or 3 generations. They learned to think in Blackfeet, to dream in Blackfeet, and in the process, they gained something more than just language. They gained confidence, identity, a sense of who they were and where they came from. Studies showed that students from the immersion school actually performed better academically than students from English-only schools. They had higher graduation rates, lower rates of substance abuse and suicide, stronger connections to family and community. The language, it turned out, was not just words, it was healing. Other language programs followed. The Blackfeet Nation launched initiatives to document the language, to create dictionaries and teaching materials, to record elders speaking traditional stories. They developed language apps, put Blackfeet labels on products in grocery stores with QR codes that would speak the words aloud, integrated language learning into every aspect of community life. In recent years, families have committed to raising their children speaking only Blackfeet at home, creating a new generation of native speakers. The language is still endangered, but it is no longer dying. It is being reborn. The cultural revival extends beyond language. Traditional arts that had nearly been lost are being taught to young people again. The intricate quill work that decorated clothing and ceremonial objects is being practiced. Beadwork designs that carry deep meaning and tell family stories are being created by a new generation of artists. Traditional knowledge about plants, about medicine, about the land is being shared. Elders teach young people which plants are edible, which have healing properties, how to prepare them, when to harvest them. This knowledge, accumulated over thousands of years, tested and refined by countless generations, is ecological science of the highest order. The warrior societies have been revived. Young men still join these societies, still participate in their ceremonies and dances, still compete to demonstrate bravery and skill. The nature of warfare has changed, but the values of courage, honor, and service to the community remain. North American Indian Days, held every July in Browning, is the largest Indian celebration in Montana. For 4 days, the reservation fills with visitors, both Blackfeet coming home and people from other tribes coming to participate. There is dancing, drumming, singing, rodeo, stick games, traditional foods. It is a celebration of survival, of culture that refused to die. The Blackfeet have also been working to restore their relationship with the buffalo. In 2016, working with conservation groups, the tribe brought buffalo back to their traditional territory. A herd was released on sacred lands adjacent to Glacier National Park, free-roaming buffalo for the first time in over a century. This was not just an ecological restoration project. It was spiritual healing. The buffalo and the Blackfeet are bound together in ways that go beyond mere economics or sustenance. The buffalo are relatives, sacred beings whose return helps make the world whole again. The restoration has continued to grow. The Blackfeet now manage their own buffalo herd, not behind fences as livestock, but as wild animals moving across the landscape as they were meant to. Young Blackfeet learn to hunt buffalo in the traditional way, with respect and ceremony, taking only what is needed, using every part, honoring the sacrifice the animal makes. The Blackfeet have also been fighting to protect their sacred sites. Chief Mountain, Niitsitapi in Blackfeet, has been a destination for vision quests and ceremonies for thousands of years. When it was included in Glacier National Park, the Blackfeet lost free access to this sacred place. They have been working for decades to establish protections to ensure that the mountain is treated with the respect it deserves, to maintain their treaty rights to use the land for traditional purposes. The Badger 2 Medicine Area, another sacred landscape, has been the focus of intense advocacy. When oil companies tried to drill there in the 1980s without tribal consultation, the Blackfeet fought back. Through legal action, political pressure, and simple refusal to accept desecration of sacred land, they eventually won. The drilling leases were canceled. The area was protected. It was a rare victory in a history full of losses. Economic development has brought both opportunities and challenges. Oil and gas production on the reservation provides jobs and revenue, but it also brings environmental concerns. The tribe has worked to balance economic needs with protection of the land, monitoring drilling operations carefully, ensuring that companies follow regulations, protecting sacred sites from damage. Tourism is another major industry. Thousands of visitors come to the reservation each year, many on their way to Glacier National Park. The Blackfeet have worked to develop tourism in ways that respect their culture, offering educational programs, cultural experiences, opportunities for visitors to learn about Blackfeet history and traditions without exploiting or commercializing sacred ceremonies. The challenges remain significant. Poverty is still a serious problem on the reservation. Unemployment is higher than the national average. Substance abuse and suicide rates are heartbreakingly high, especially among young people. The trauma of generations of oppression does not heal quickly, but there is hope, there is pride, there is a generation of young Blackfeet who are reclaiming their language, their culture, their identity, who are succeeding in schools and universities, who are becoming doctors and lawyers and teachers and artists, who are bringing their education and skills back to the reservation to help their people. Lily Gladstone, a Blackfeet actress, became the first Native American nominated for Best Actress at the Academy Awards for her role in Killers of the Flower Moon. Her nomination and her grace in representing her people on the world stage is just one example of Blackfeet excellence becoming visible to mainstream America. The Blackfeet are not victims waiting for rescue. They are a sovereign nation making their own decisions, charting their own course, determined to thrive on their own terms. They are proving that it is possible to honor tradition while embracing modernity, to maintain cultural identity while participating fully in the contemporary world. Stand on the Blackfeet Reservation today and look west toward the mountains. The Rocky Mountain front rises like a wall of stone and ice and sky, the backbone of the world, just as it has for millions of years. Chief Mountain stands square and solid, Thunder's home, sacred and eternal. Look across the rolling prairie, and if you listen carefully, you can almost hear the thunder of buffalo hooves, the songs of warriors, the prayers of generations stretching back 18,000 years. The wind still blows across this land as it always has, carrying the scent of sage and sweetgrass, carrying the memory of everything that has happened here. The Blackfeet people have endured what would have destroyed other nations. They faced smallpox that killed 90% of some bands. They survived the deliberate destruction of the buffalo, the foundation of their entire way of life. They endured the Marias Massacre, the murder of women and children on a winter morning. They survived the theft of their land, treaty after broken treaty, promise after broken promise. They survived the boarding schools designed to kill the Indian and save the man. Schools where children were beaten for speaking their own language, where culture was treated as a disease to be cured. They survived the prohibition of their most sacred ceremonies, the sun dance driven underground for 50 years but never extinguished. They survived poverty and starvation, disease and despair, generations of systematic oppression designed to make them disappear. And not only did they survive, they refused to let go of who they were. Today, the Blackfeet language, which was nearly lost, is being spoken again by children who learn it from birth. The sun dance, which was outlawed, is performed every summer in the traditional way. The buffalo, which were driven to the edge of extinction, are returning to Blackfeet land. The culture, which was supposed to die out within a generation, is more vibrant than it has been in over a century. This is not romanticization. The challenges are real. The poverty is real. The health disparities are real. The ongoing effects of historical trauma are real. But so is the resilience. So is the determination. So is the absolute refusal to be erased from history. The Blackfeet are still here, still speaking their language, still practicing their ceremonies, still living on the land that has been theirs since the ice retreated and the world was made new. They are the Niitsitapi, the original people, the real people, and they are teaching the world what it means to endure, to resist, to survive with dignity and strength. Their story is not a tragedy, though it contains terrible tragedies. Their story is not a tale of noble savages frozen in time, though there is nobility beyond measure in how they have conducted themselves. Their story is one of the great human stories, a testament to what people can endure, what they can overcome, what they can preserve when they absolutely refuse to let it die. The elders say that the flame of Blackfeet culture never went out. It flickered in the dark times, burned low when the winds of oppression howled. But it never died because there were always those who kept it alive, who fed it with their memories and their stories and their stubborn refusal to forget. And now that flame is burning brighter. Young people are learning the language, practicing the ceremonies, asking the elders to teach them the old ways. The circle is unbroken, the chain of knowledge and culture and identity that stretches back 18,000 years continues forward into the future. When the sun rises over Chief Mountain, when its light spreads across the prairie and touches the backbone of the world, it illuminates a people who have every reason to be proud. Proud of their ancestors who survived the unsurvivable. Proud of their elders who kept the knowledge alive. Proud of their young people who are reclaiming their heritage with passion and dedication. The Blackfeet Nation stands as proof that Indigenous cultures are not relics of the past, but living, evolving, vital communities with much to teach the modern world about resilience, about connection to land, about maintaining identity and values in the face of enormous pressure to conform. Their story reminds us that history is not something that happened and ended. It is something that continues, something that shapes us, something we are still living through. The effects of the Marias Massacre, of the boarding schools, of the land theft and treaty violations, these are not ancient history. They are yesterday. They are today. They are the context in which the Blackfeet still live. But their story also reminds us that people are not defined by what happens to them, but by how they respond. The Blackfeet chose survival. They chose resistance. They chose to maintain their culture and identity even when everything was arrayed against them. As long as the backbone of the world stands, as long as the wind blows across these plains, as long as the sun rises over Chief Mountain, the Blackfeet will be here, speaking their language, practicing their ceremonies, living as Niitsitapi, the original people. Their story is still being written, and it will be written by Blackfeet hands, in Blackfeet words, on Blackfeet land, for generations yet to come. The Blackfeet Nation endures. The backbone stands eternal.